Hello everybody, it's Friday and it's the 13th of August and I'm here with Fridays with Father. Jonah's asleep on the floor, otherwise he would come and say hello. And I'm here to share with you a few things which may be going on in my head. And I thought to myself today, Poetry Friday. Why not a poem? Mainly because a poem of mine, which is a favourite, came to my mind yesterday. And I'd forgotten a bit, and then I looked it up again, and I thought, I got more out of it the second or the third time. And I think that's the way poetry works. So I thought I'd share with you today a poem, and it's by a Welsh poet, and his name is R.S. Thomas. Now, he was an Anglican minister in the north of Wales, in a very kind of remote place called Aberdaron. A beautiful place, but a bit bleak in terms of its landscape, and it's reflected very much in his poetry. But also reflected in his poetry is his life of faith, and the church as it was then. He died, I think, this last century, the end of the. I mean, but fairly recent poet. But the name of this poem is called Chapel Deacon. Now, bear in mind that the church which was most operative in north of Wales, really, would be nonconformist Baptist chapels. So that's why it's chapel. So chapel is really what they would be, their church community. And the deacon is obviously the ordained minister who takes care of this little chapel. And in this poem, Chapel Deacon, the name of the deacon is Davies, which is a very Welsh name. Okay, so I'll read it to you now, and then I'll read it at the end of Fridays with Father to see if you get any more out of it. And I got a couple of points I just want to make with you about it. So it's Chapel Deacon by R.S. Thomas, and it says, "Who put that crease in your soul, Davies? Ready this fine morning for the staid chapel, where the book's frown sobers the sunlight? Who taught you to pray and scheme at once, your eyes turning skyward, while your swift mind weighs your heifer's chances in the next town's fair on Thursday? Are your coals kindled for God, or is the burning of your lean cheeks because you sit too near that girl's smouldering gaze? Tell me, Davies, for the faint breeze from heaven freshens, and I roll in it. Who taught you your deft poise?" And that's it. I hope some of it made sense to you. I'm not the best person at reciting poetry, but maybe some of my inflection brought some points out for you. But there's two kind of lines in it which stand out for me and really kind of impress upon me on the importance of our spirituality. Is the first thing is, who put that crease in your soul? It's a wonderful question to be asking ourselves, because it describes faith, really. Faith as like a crease in your soul. Imagine, a crease, in your shirt, and which you can't get out, or it's wrinkled, so you can't, even if you ironed it really hard, it wouldn't come out, but the crease would remain. And that's how it describes, our faith. And the writer of the poem is asking the deacon, who put that crease there? Who put it there? Who put your faith there? It's a wonderful image for me. Who put that crease in your soul? To think that, that Jesus put a crease in our soul, when we were baptized, and that crease is going to be there with us forever, and we spend most of our lives trying to work out what that crease is, and some people seem to get it, more easily than others. And some people are just like struggling to think, well, what is that? What's going on with me? And what it is, Jesus who's in our heart and in our life, and trying to reach out to us, to make his presence felt. And us, sort of sometimes getting it and sometimes not getting it. But there's always that big question mark, well, what is that inside of me? Well, first of all, it's my soul, it's our soul, which we often don't talk about. It's that place really where God resides, and where silence resides, where peace resides when we go within, So to ask that question, first and foremost, who put that crease in your soul is just a wonderful question, I think. And this has been asked of this kind of probably rather crusty old, sort of dried up deacon in a chapel, who's obviously very faithful in his works, but he's a human being, because it alludes to the fact that, that whilst he's kind of looking heavenward, he's also thinking, well, how much money am I going to get for that heifer down at the markets, and at the same time, it's like, if he's looking heavenward and thinking all godly things, but then there's a rather attractive young lady over there who's looking in his direction, and he's, tempted, human being. We're human beings, we're human beings, and very important part of our humanity is knowing how to deal with that whilst trying to work out in our lives, that crease, that fold in my soul, what does it mean? Well, it means that Jesus is present and Jesus embraces us no matter wherever we are and however we are. So we don't have to have it all worked out. We don't have to be the most upright or the most holy, or but there's a crease in our soul, and Jesus has gotten hold of us, and that's what matters, and that's so important for all of us, any part of our journey in our life, who put the crease in your soul? And then the final kind of question, really, which is the similar kind of way of thinking of it, he says, who taught you your deft poise? That's a wonderful thing, that to have a deft poise, to think that faith, I think anyway, faith gives us something, gives us a certain look or a certain poise or a certain appearance, when we are trying our best to, bear Jesus in all things wherever we go, the faith life we have within that goes on, it does transmit itself through our being. Or somebody said to me the other day about, you have an aura. If we have an aura, then the aura we have is an aura of faith, and it's an aura of Jesus, and it's reflecting, if you like, that crease in our soul, that you can't get out. And we might spend a lot of our lives trying to run away from that, and entertaining ourselves in all kinds of like fanciful ways, ways of the world and personal ambition and popularity and success, running away, trying to escape, what is inescapable, that crease in our soul, and then eventually we have to come to terms with it at some stage in our life. That's what faith does to us. So even people, who abandon the church, who stop going to church, or who lapse, as we call it, in the ways of the faith, eventually, they have to deal, with what's happening to them, and what happened to them when they were baptized was Jesus in the form of that crease, and which actually gives them more of a deft poise or an ability to engage with the world, and then they think, and it all comes through faith, and it all comes through Jesus, and for that reason we celebrate. And so I wanted to bring that to you today, and I'll read it at the end as well, just to sort of remind you, because it's a great poem, and it's got bits of humour in it, which I love. And we will post the words of this poem online, called Chapel Deacon by R.S. Thomas. But picking up on that point that I wanted to say about, the crease and the deft poise, and people, trying to escape that, or that reality of who we are as baptized members of the church, as baptized members of God's family. I just wanted to talk about last Sunday. Last Sunday because, as is usual, I gave my Sunday homily, and there was a lot of feedback because it seemed to resonate with a lot of people. What I said, it seemed to, what's the word? Not so much impress, but it had an effect on people, what I said in my homily. And first of all, thank you for the feedback. Secondly, just to give you a bit of just background to my homily this last Sunday, was that, I wasn't supposed to be on the 5 o'clock Mass. And so, I wasn't planning to be there. It was somebody else we thought was down, and they didn't show, and it ended up me. So I turned up for the 5 o'clock Mass, not really very well prepared, and as I told you all, I was really basically winging it. So my homily on Saturday evening was probably sort of like maybe a different version from the one I gave on Sunday morning, but nevertheless, the basic thrust of the matter was that, and what I suppose maybe resonated with many people was that, there are people who drift from the faith, and that kind of makes our parents sad, especially when they've invested so much time in us, in trying to bring us up in the importance of the faith. And when we abandon it, really, it really sort of has an effect on people's lives. And you've told me that too, about your siblings or your children, and you pray and you hope that they will come back. And I suppose basically I was saying in my homily that that nothing is ever really lost, and God is at work in the lives of all people in ways that we don't even know, and the good work that we all do in helping people to be faithful to Jesus, or showing them the ways of the faith, it probably inspires and influences other people more than we think. And so we shouldn't be upset because God doesn't let go of us, So, and you didn't do anything wrong, basically. You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything right by bringing them to Jesus in the beginning. And how we should be more, not say flexible, but more open in some ways to reaching out to the people in ways that they know how to communicate or be involved, and in ways which encourage. We need to encourage people. So you haven't got to be like the best prayer or the best attendee, or or the best donor in order to come and be part of anything we do in the church. Really, it's just like anybody that shows an interest in anything, we just want to be encouraging and welcome them. In other words, anybody that shows an interest in that crease that they have in their soul, that deft poise that faith brings, we need to encourage it. And I mentioned that, by having the storytelling event in the courtyard brought a lot of people who would not normally be present. And yet by us doing that, we were actually sort of encouraging people who had maybe drifted away in some ways. And we need to be more open and more welcoming, and more accepting of the fact that people drift in and drift out. But it doesn't mean to say they're not asking themselves that question. The question being, who put that crease in your soul? All right. So if you remember nothing else about today, remember, the question, who put that crease in your soul? Who put that crease in our soul? It's the question that we all wrestle with. And even those people who are now drifted off, they're still wrestling with it in their own way, and in time will find an answer and find their way back to where they belong. So anyway, that's my four penneth worth for what it's worth, and the chapel deacon poem made me think of that point in regards to my homily this past Sunday. But anyway, thank you for the feedback. It's always good to get good feedback rather than bad feedback. Well, I guess all feedback is good, but sometimes it's easier to take when it's nice, so and anyway, it seemed to have an impact on you last week, and so I'm grateful for that. And that's basically about it for today, except to sort of say this coming Sunday is the Feast of the Assumption, and more about that and about her, the Blessed Virgin, next Friday. Fridays with Father. Next week we will talk about the Feast of the Assumption we're celebrating this Sunday and the presence of our Blessed Mother in our lives. Until then, I wish you all a very happy weekend, and be joyful, keep the faith, and I will leave the final word to R.S. Thomas, Welsh poet, chapel deacon. Who put that crease in your soul, Davies? Ready this fine morning for the staid chapel where the book's frown sobers the sunlight? Who taught you to pray and scheme at once, your eyes turning skyward, while your swift mind weighs your heifer's chances in the next town's fair on Thursday? Are your coals kindled for God, or is the burning of your lean cheeks because you sit too near that girl's smouldering gaze? Tell me, Davies, for the faint breeze from heaven freshens, and I roll in it. Who taught you your deft poise? Cheers. Bye-bye.